Basically, this is just supposed to be kind of an informal Q&A session. Duana and Aquila have, this is kind of a continuation with them. Ray Baranek, this is your first time in with this, but basically what we've been doing is just kind of having an informal Q&A session. Aquila and Duana are currently learning about the secured party creditor process and how to go through that. And they've been asking me some questions about that. I've been helping them to understand that. I finally have the SPC documents up on the website. You do have to become a member to access them though. But once you've downloaded them, then you can begin to fill them out. You can get them notarized. You can start to file everything and get your UCC1 paperwork done and start to work on becoming your estate national. So how far has your education come so far?
Aquila and I, we actually just got the book you recommended, The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're just starting on that, and we've kind of decided to hone in more on trust law first.
Okay, rather than the SPC process. All right, that's cool. We can switch gears over to that.
Okay, because that's where we're at right now. We did dibble and dabble and gather information in regards to SPC, but right now our primary focus has been trust law. SPC isn't out, it's just kind of on the back burner right now.
No, I get it. Got to do what you got to do when you got to do it.
Yeah, I guess we came to the conclusion that we would probably want to have a trust set up before we do the SPC process, so that when we are ready to start maneuvering, we already have like our stuff structured and set up. That's at least how our brain is starting to break all the content down. And it's just like, well, we need a trust. We need to be able to retitle stuff. We need to be able to operate privately. So it doesn't make sense to do the secure party.
Oh, you're cutting out there, so I'm just going to step in. I totally get where you're coming from. You can do it either way, really. You could do the trust before you become a secured party creditor, or a secured party creditor before you do the trust. It really doesn't matter. Obviously, the more that you get done, the more official everything is, the more powerful it is. But the order in which it gets done isn't necessarily all that important. It all has to get done. So if you want to get the trust done first, that's all well and fine. It's all good to have that set up first, if that's the way you feel better for it. We can get started on that. Where do you guys want to start? Do you have any questions or?
I do have a question. So say if we do the trust before the SPC, would it be a little conflicting being that
No, you don't have to be a secured party creditor to set up a private trust.
Well, but would it be not the fact that not asking if they work hand in hand or not, or if they go against each other, but as far as being that we're still in the public and setting up a trust, is it better to be in the private first and then set up the trust, or does it not matter?
But it's a technicality, really, because technically speaking, you are a private person, and the secured party creditor process is really just a system of notifying everybody that you're aware of what the true law is and where you truly stand in law. And whether or not you're still technically considered lost at sea according to the law doesn't necessarily matter. You're still a real human being that's actually doing real things in the real world. So, they can't necessarily take that away from you. But a trust does become more powerful when everyone in that trust, every trustee in that trust, is a secured party creditor.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I lost you guys for like the past 2 minutes. As I had got home, my phone switched to my Wi-Fi and
that's what happened.
messed up my connection. So I kind of After I said what I said, I didn't hear anything that you guys were mentioning until just now.
Gotcha. My apologies. Yeah, when you cut out, I thought you were still able to hear us. So there was a lot said that I don't know how to repeat right now.
I know we were saying, I know I had mentioned that we thought it would be in the proper steps to set up a trust first before doing the SPC process. And that's
Oh,
kind of
okay. So what I was saying when you cut out was that it doesn't necessarily matter what order you do it in, but your trust will become more powerful once everyone in it is a secured party creditor.
Gotcha. Now, were you asking him questions, Dewana, about the whole nationality thing?
No, I didn't ask him a question about the nationality. Once you cut out, I had asked him, basically, is it better to set up to be a SPC before creating a trust, being that we know that we're private, but we're operating in public as our private selves. So would it be best to become secured party first and then do the trust, or does it not really affect it that much in that sense? And that's when he ended up saying that.
Whatever makes more sense to you. To me,
Yeah.
it makes more sense to become a secured party creditor first. And so that's the way I did it. But you don't have to go that way. You're especially since the trusts that I would suggest that you use or have developed for you, I would suggest going through Brilliance in Commerce when you're ready to get your trust documents together. Of all of the different companies that I have spoken to and been watching for the past 10 years, the way that Brilliance in Commerce does their trust, in my opinion, is the most powerful form. Everybody says that their form is the most powerful form, but what these guys do is they just they're smart in that they don't try to play the system using legal terminology, right? They stay away from all forms of legal terminology in their paperwork, and that's what makes them the most powerful, right? By staying away from legal terminology that could construe anything to be in a man-made jurisdiction, right? They keep everything in the jurisdiction of natural law. And so that's how they capitalize on keeping everything in the private jurisdiction, because the private jurisdiction is the natural law jurisdiction, right? There's like, for example, has some trusts, and he gets really, really super fancy with his trusts, with syntax and forward/backward reading characteristics and things that I don't necessarily understand that he claims are more powerful. But I haven't seen his trusts in action as long as I've seen Brilliance in Commerce's trusts. And everyone else I've ever looked at has gotten raided by the FBI, the SEC, or whatever for, illegal practices. But Brilliance in Commerce has been going 50 plus years with these trusts and have had zero consequences whatsoever, because the way that they do it, and they claim this, and it's true, they do it exactly the same way that the rich royal elite in this world do their private trusts, right? In order to keep everything in the private and legally avoid income taxes, and in most cases legally avoid even having to file for income taxes.
Now,
I forgot where I was going with that.
I do have a question. So my comprehension gets clouded when I think about what advantages and benefits does setting up a trust award us compared to what we would get from becoming a secured party creditor. Like, can you explain in lame terms how those complement or support one another?
Right. So the secured party creditor is your status in law, and the trust is what you use either to protect assets or to run a business, right? So becoming all right. So right now you're already familiar with how you have a corporate debtor trade name versus your natural human being, right?
Yes.
Okay. So becoming a secured party creditor is basically number one, understanding the difference between those two, understanding that your corporation is a transmitting utility that you use in law so that you can use currency, right? Because you as a natural human being cannot use currency because it's a fictional thing. Only fictional entities can use fictional things. So only your corporate trade name can actually use currency. And right now, what you're doing is you're operating as the corporation rather than as the representative of the corporation, right? At law. And that's why you're lost at sea, right? So it's the corporation that's subject to the maritime admiralty, maritime jurisdictions of law, right? It's the corporation that has to pay the fines and get the licenses and so on and so forth. It's the corporation that has to pay the income taxes, you know, blah, 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 blah. When you go through
before you proceed, you proceed. I understand that we are acting as the actual corporation, not the representative. What would the technical term be for the representative? Because I've heard accommodation party be thrown around. I've heard trustee. I've heard authorized representative.
Yeah, it's all the same. You know, it's whatever word makes you feel the most comfortable, you know. Is really all that boils down to. But ultimately, that's what you're doing is when you become a secured party creditor, you're separating your natural person from your corporate person and setting your natural person up as the holder in due course, or, you know, the title holder of the corporation, the owner of the corporation, right? Because right now the government owns your corporation, technically speaking, right? Because you're lost at sea. Right. But it is a gift that can benefit you, right? But in order for you to do that, you have to perfect title to it, right? You have to accept in due course your birth certificate, right? And then you have to transfer that through the SPC process, file a lien against it, right? So that you become the holder in due course. Yeah, no, I have to stop there because there's some more things I have to research before I understand that more fully.
The holder in due course?
Yeah, so I was going to go into a thing about international sovereignty, but I'm trying to keep it simpler on the state level of things for now. But yeah, once you file your UCC1 claim with all that, then you've basically become a secured party creditor, right? And you've basically put the world on notice that you're no longer lost at sea. You're a real human being, you exist in the flesh, and that you in the flesh are the holder in due course and the representative of the corporation and not the corporation itself. Therefore, you are no longer subject to the law as your corporation is, right? And from there, you have to learn how to fight jurisdiction if you were to ever go to court, right? You have to know how to fight jurisdiction. And then from there, you can go and become a state, sovereign state national, or you can step it up to international sovereignty.
So I've heard these thrown around becoming an American, U.S. national. I've heard U.S. national.
U.S. national, American national, sovereign state national, they're all the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this, I guess, brings me to my next question, because originally we had shared with you that we were with a group of other women who we were all trying to go through this process together. Mm-hmm. They found another person that they started working with. And this person was trying to get us to file paperwork, basically making a claim that we were indigenous and that because we were here before all of this stuff was set up, that makes us like basically the sovereign in so many words, and that because of that fact, you have to honor this and discharge all of our debts and leave us the hell alone, basically.
I'm
And
not so familiar with indigenous things because as far as I understand, that only relates to, for example, Native Americans, and I'm not a Native American, and I don't know any Native Americans, so I've never had any reason to study the indigenous forms of sovereignty.
well, I was just going to simply say, well, I was going to ask what were your thoughts on it, because me and Dewana have come to a space where we feel like what your nationality or ethnicity is has nothing to do with becoming a secured party or setting up a private trust, only because it doesn't
Correct.
matter where you are from or what title you may have to a land, because you were indigenous to this space before anyone else settled
Correct.
here.
All that matters is whether you were born in this country or in a state in this country or in one of these states, one of the states of the union.
And that, and also, I guess, furthermore, what really is being disputed at this point is not what you identify as, but are you contracting and conducting commerce, and how are you doing that, which puts you in certain jurisdictions, right?
So,
That's
right.
basically what we're doing.
And that's a technicality, right? So are you contracting in commerce or are you contracting in trade?
So, okay,
Right?
I
So
didn't know that there
commerce
was
is
a
Admiralty
difference.
Maritime and trade is private jurisdiction. So, this is the way that they try and trick you back into their jurisdiction. They try and tell you that you're operating in commerce. You say, no, I'm operating in trade.
So sorry, I didn't know this was hot. So if we were like, I know you already said that if we file trade names and all of that stuff, that kind of puts us back in their jurisdiction, or that entity is owned by their jurisdiction. So why do they call it a trade name versus
A commerce name?
a commerce
That's
name?
a very
Or
good question.
and then like here, I know that they have on the form where you like try to request your entity, they have where you can request a trade name. And then they also have a fictitious name registration. And I'm like, well, isn't that the same thing? What's the difference between registering a fictitious name versus a trade name?
Right. That's different towns use different terms.
But
Yeah.
this is in Ohio. Let
Mm-hmm.
me close my blinds because the wind is making
Yeah,
a lot of noise.
in my state of Connecticut, in my hometown of Granby, they call it a trade name. When I apply for a certificate of business name, actually, I think they just call it certificate of business name.
They have both here in Ohio. And so I was actually confused when I was trying to originally set up business stuff. I'm like, am I doing a fictitious name registration or am I doing a trade name, and what's the difference? And I
What
was
did they
trying to
say?
research. I didn't even contact them. I should have did that. I don't know why. I just got on the internet and tried to, become a Google scholar to find that answer when I could have just called them and asked them to clarify the difference.
Oh well, next time. Anything you want to throw in, Ray?
Well, I'm behind here, I'm at square one with this stuff. So, the couple of questions I got is one, I need to learn what a secured party creditor is. And you also have, what did you call it? The private association membership thing?
Yeah.
I have a keen interest in that too, as well as the people that, I'm involved in. So being at square one, where do I start?
So secured party creditor is, as I was just explaining, the difference between your corporation and your natural person. So the secured party creditor is essentially the private side of law person as opposed to the public side of law person, right? So your corporation is the public side of law person, and your natural person is the private side of law, and it's called a secured party creditor, right? Because when it comes to the banking system, for example, when you apply for a mortgage, one of the documents that you have to sign in that mortgage is a promissory note. Now, only creditors, right, can sign promissory notes and give that promissory note monetary value that the bank can then take and create money out of, right? You have to be a creditor to create money, right? And so this is why I say you're already a creditor, right? Because you can already go and take out a loan and create money, right? You just have to understand that it's you that's creating the money, not the bank, right? As the creditor, you're the creditor, not the bank, right? And becoming a secured party creditor is actually just understanding what that is and how you can operate in the private versus in the public.
Okay, all right. Well, again, on your webpage, you have documentation about all this, so I can, start reading and learning.
Yeah, I have to probably get a little bit better at getting into the basics of it. And everything is still new, but I do have a page dedicated to the secured party creditor. If you go onto my website and then over to the members area, once you're logged in, you can just go down. If you just hover over members area, a drop-down menu pops up. Or if you're on a cell phone, I think you have to click on it and then the drop-down menu pops up. Then from there, you can log in and then go to the secured party creditor page. And that'll give you kind of a basic rundown of everything. It'll have all the documents that you need will be in there. So you can download all the documents. And really everything that you need to know is in those documents, right? Because what you need to know is contract is the law, right? Our corporation is subject to, United States code and, our state general statutes and all that and IRS codes and blah, blah, blah. But we, the natural person, are not, right? What we are subject to is, contract law, whatever contracts that we get ourselves into. And first and foremost, those contracts would be our secured party creditor documents, which is what's on that page, right? And so if you read through all of those documents, that is basically the law as you need to, be aware of it. Like that's how you operate in the world, right? And so understanding the contents of those documents is really where everything comes in. That's probably the most important part of our education is just understanding those documents.
Okay. Now, what about, I'm not sure if I have the name right, this private association club thing?
Private membership association.
Membership.
It's as old as the United States is, and it comes about as a result of constitutional law, which requires that everybody has the freedom to peaceably assemble, right? And so the private membership association became really, really popular during alcohol prohibition, right? As a way of getting around alcohol prohibition, right? So you couldn't sell alcohol, but if you were a private membership association, you could buy and sell alcohol in the private arena, right? In private trade versus public commerce, and skirt around the law, right? The law couldn't attack you because you were under the constitutional right to peaceably assemble, right? So what we have to realize is that society itself is just a club, right? Just like any other private membership association or club. And you're only subject to the rules of that club if you're a member of that club, right? And private membership associations aren't a member of the United States corporate club, right? They're a member only of constitutional US. So they operate only under constitutional law.
Okay. So again, on your webpage, you have all the documentation necessary to, embrace that.
To start a private membership association?
Yeah.
I haven't created a page for that yet, but I can create an educational page for that.
I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something again, I myself and people I'm involved with will probably have an interest in. Okay.
Cool. All right. I'll consider that.
Is this the thing that you said you saw when you were on a particular page and someone was referencing the private association or something like that?
I don't recall what you're asking about, but
No, that question for Dewana.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember she mentioned something like that to me before. Dawana?
I don't know if you, there you go.
My side is a little noisy over here. What was it a question, or are you asking if I have a question?
No, I was asking, so one was talking about the private association. And I was saying, was that what you found when you said you were in one of those groups and someone was talking about being a part of a private membership association, and how that was enough to secure them without having to do, you know, the secured party process and all that stuff, or something like that?
Yes, that's what, hold on real quick.
Hold on, let me see.
Yes, that's what she meant. She mentioned that, and she mentioned something called, I think it's a FBO. I'll look at what she said it is real quick. Here, baby boy. Okay, you don't want that, all right. But yeah,
But
it was a private members association, and hold on, it's right here. A FBO, which is faith-based organization.
So these are like basically creating your own little private club or society.
Yeah, FBOs, as far as I know, are 508c1As.
What's that?
A 508c1A is how basically any faith-based organization, aka church, operates. Like if you just set up a church, but you don't file anything with any government or notify the IRS or anything else, then basically what you've done is you just set up a 508c1A entity, right? What the 508 code in the IRS states, the whole reason they created that was basically to say, if you're a church, you do not have to become a 501c3 by filing 501c3 paperwork. You just basically don't do anything and you remain a 508c1A. 508c1A being the actual code wherein it says that, right? I'm paraphrasing it, of course, and you have to understand what it means in order to, you know, paraphrase it like that. But that's basically what it tells you, right? If you set up a church and you do nothing, then you're exercising your legal right to operate as a tax-free church. But the caveat is anybody that donates to you doesn't automatically get a tax exemption. They have to apply for the tax exemption for that donation. Whereas if you're a 501c3, then they automatically get that tax exemption for their donation. But that's, you know, if they're an FBO, a faith-based organization, they don't necessarily have to be a private membership association in order to, for example, skip out on income taxes. The reason I became a private membership association is A, so that I could not have to file income taxes because it's not a government registered entity. And B, because I'm a natural law consultant, you know, I'm helping people, advising people in terms of law, and I'm not a bar licensed attorney, right? So in order to prevent any government agency, for example, from trying to claim that I'm practicing law without a license, I have to operate as a private membership association.
So you've created your own, or you are a part of one that is already pre-existing?
I created my own. I don't know of any that are pre-existing that do things the way that I would advise people to do things.
And so essentially, okay, what if we wanted to, and I'm not saying that this is something I want to do, but I'm just trying to follow along with the train of thought. If I wanted to be a natural doctor, could I set up a private member association and give people?
You actually could practice medicine without a license as a private membership association. You can do that, yes.
Okay.
Wow, that's vital information.
Well,
I
yes,
don't advise doing it unless you actually know what you're doing and have the ability to back up the fact that you know what you're doing with some sort of educational certificate, at the very least, you know?
I mean, I'm not saying that this is something that I desire to do, but
Well, I know what you're asking for, because you're not actually like a medical doctor. You're like a midwife type of thing, right?
No,
Or is
that's
that, no, that's Duana.
yeah, that's the
Mhm.
one. I'm more into nutrition and herbalism.
Okay, yeah. I don't think you need a license and, a doctorate to practice that. But you could definitely do that as a private membership association, for sure.
But that's vital information, especially for people or living souls who are creating their own
Mhm.
communities.
And now see, as a private membership association, you could skip having to go the private trust route, right? Because the private membership association itself is a non-taxable entity, right? So basically, you would just set it up as a private membership association, and then you would just go to the bank and you would set up, whatever bank account. Well, you go to your town hall and you get the business name certificate, right? So that you could set up a DBA account at your bank, right? And you set up that DBA account under your name, doing business as, with your social security number, right? And that doing business as name is the same name as your private membership association, right? And that membership association is by contract. Now, the bank doesn't have that contract, but they don't need it. Everyone you do business with signs that contract, and you have that contract on file. So if any agency tries to say anything, you just be like, look, see, I'm a private membership association.
So if I understand you right, then you need members, okay? You just can't have people walking in your door and you say
Right.
you're a member.
They have to sign a
to sign.
contract.
Okay, all right.
They don't necessarily have to pay a membership fee. There could be different types of members where you have like maybe customer members that don't pay a fee, and you have members that work in the organization that maybe pay a yearly fee, or however that is. It really doesn't matter, as long as all the language in your contract, basically is hitting all of the points that a private membership association has to hit.
So I wonder,
I have
like,
a-
I've been to the site before, and this guy.
I'm
sells
sorry,
a
can
lot-
you start over?
Sorry, I was gonna say, I went to this website, and this guy whose website I went to, he practices a lot of herbalism, and he sells stuff to people, and he gives them guidance and recommendations. And I noticed that on his site, he has a disclaimer that in order to access his information, whether it's free or paid, that you have to become a member first.
Okay.
Now this makes me think, like, is that what he's doing to protect himself lawfully and legally?
It sounds like he's running a private membership association. Yep.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, was this something, is this a type of organization that was created, or who was it created by? I get who it's created for, but who was it created by?
What do you mean?
Like,
Who
who
is the
founded
inventor?
the idea of a private members association? Like, is this an outlet through the government, or like who
Oh,
created the
okay.
outlet?
All right, hold on. Let me see if I can. There was a Supreme Court ruling in I think 1933, somewhere around there. So private membership associations existed before then, right? And then, as prohibition happened and came around, they started to become more popular. And then, of course, the United States government wanted to try and shut it down. So they started filing lawsuits against private membership associations that were selling alcohol. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the private membership associations. And so the US government since then has had no power over any private membership associations whatsoever. So I will absolutely find that information, and I will link to that in the webpage that I create for the information on private membership associations.
Okay. And ironically, Akila, we came across the definition and Cameron, it had that same example in there about the alcohol. We came across in the Black's Law Dictionary one day. We were researching some stuff, but it completely slipped my mind that we even read into that before.
The private association thing.
It was one day when we were reading David Straight stuff. And
Yeah, I
We
think
looked
it's
up.
starting to become a lot more popular again because of COVID-19. You know, the government was doing all their mandates and this, that, and the next thing. And a lot of businesses started to realize that they could skirt around these mandates by becoming private membership associations. And so it's all over the internet again. It's probably how I came across it, actually.
So when you do it, do you clarify that you're going off of the definitions of the common usage of membership and association? Like, do you specify that you're not using the
Well,
legal
you
use
actually
version?
clarified that you're using the constitutional, amendment associated with those terms.
Okay. But I
Right?
know
You're citing directly from the Constitution.
So is that a conflict then, being that the legal definition of membership and association, I can't recall it directly off the top of my head, but I know it seems conflicting for the legal definition of membership and association, which has something to do with citizenship. Basically,
No, as far as I know, there is no legal definition for membership or association. There's a legal definition for citizen and civilian. And those are the terms that we want to avoid because those are the public jurisdiction terms. And that's why we specifically use the terms membership and association, is because those are private terms.
okay.
Or rather, I should say they're not, public legal terms.
I think it was like a following down the rabbit hole. So it was like member and association reference organization, and then organization says that it is a body of persons, and then in parentheses it says like a union or corporation.
Well, like a union or corporation, it's also like an LLC or like any kind of business or enterprise.
So a private membership association, would that be another form of how we, the living souls, conduct with the public?
With the
In a
private
more
membership
private
association?
manner?
Well, yeah, that's how you would conduct that particular trade, but
If we
not necessarily with the public, right? We
Yeah.
have to
Okay.
we have to make sure we're not confusing the common term public, which is just the people, with the legal term public, which is the law, the legal
Right.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we had a private member association and we required people to become members of it before they could access our products or services or whatever, then technically we would only be working with private people.
Right. And
So
I mean,
do you
that's really all you got to do. Like, for example, in my home improvement business, all of my contracts, when it comes to, for example, the disputes, like how we're going to handle disputes, I say right in there, this is a private contract between private people under private equity, and blah, blah, blah. This is how we're going to handle it through private arbitration and all that, right? You just put that into all your contracts. If you need that kind of language in your contract, you just state it. And contract makes the law. Once the contract states we're operating in the private, then the state has no jurisdiction.
So can we, I guess, then talk about, I know you said that if we have a private members association that we wouldn't necessarily need a trust. But are there advantages to having both? Like what is the ideal setup?
It depends really on what you want to get, because there is no particular one setup that's going to be best for everyone or for every situation. There's different setups that are ideal for different people or different situations. So it really depends on what you want and what you don't want, more specifically. That depends on how you would want to go about setting things up. So I guess the question for you would be, what are you looking for as far as how you want to operate and what you don't want to have to deal with when it comes to the government and the IRS?
I mean, I would love to get around not paying taxes. And I would love to be able to do that in a lawful and legal manner, not evade them, but avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
I want immunity. Like I want to be able to, conduct my affairs. And even if I do still want to operate a business and work with, individuals who may not necessarily be in their private capacity, but I want to make sure that I'm protected, and could potentially give some of my, I guess you would say, immunity to them in the event that they do work with me.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't transfer. But let me ask you this. How are you currently operating?
So currently I'm operating so right now I do several different things. Like I dibble and dabble on multiple things. So I do Uber, Lyft, and like
And
a
those are
grocery
all under like a
Yes.
W-9 or a W-2.
Yes. So I'm currently an independent contractor, right?
Mhm.
I would want to update that paperwork so that I can change the status of that so that I'm no longer an independent contractor, but maybe I could have an LLC or a trust. I don't know.
Are they 1099ing you or W-2ing you?
They're 1099ing me.
Okay, so here's an important thing you need to know. When you operate as an independent contractor under your social security number, you're operating under your social security number, right? Okay, good. So when you operate as an independent contractor under your social security number, you have the voluntary right to consent to income taxes, right? Here's what that means, okay? You do business with somebody, they pay you on a 1099, maybe you fill out a W-9 form so that they have your information ready to put on the 1099 form at the end of the year, right? That W-9 form doesn't actually get filed. That's just information for them to have to fill out a 1099 with later, right? So don't be afraid to fill out that W-9. It doesn't mean anything. At the end of the year, right, they figure out how much they paid you. They fill out a 1099 with your information on it. They send that to the IRS. Now the IRS knows they paid you X amount of money, right? So for their tax information doesn't mean anything for you though, right? Just because they filed that they paid you doesn't mean that you have to file a 1099 claiming that they paid you anything, right? But if you do file a 1099 claiming that they paid you something, that you've made any money this year, you basically just voluntarily consented to pay income tax to the IRS, right? That's how that works. As long as you never file that paperwork with the IRS, you never file that 1099, you never file for your return, you don't have to pay income tax on any of your income as an independent contractor.
Now, where can I find this for verification for me so I can?
I'm still looking for it again. I came across it years ago, and you know what? At this point, I'm just going to have to suck it up and realize that I'm just going to have to comb my way through the IRS code myself in order to find that statute again. It was listed somewhere in some article or book I read somewhere, and I can't find that article or book anymore, or page that it's on, and I'm just going to have to find it again.
Book, you said?
But it does state in Internal Revenue Code, quote, income tax is voluntary except for government employees and corporations.
There's a video I can share with you. I think she mentions it in there. She used to work for the IRS, and she was saying how taxes aren't
Mandatory.
Yes, and how for years they trained them that it was, but they would exempt a lot of the different statutes until she someone else ended up putting her onto it, and she started going, since she was working for the IRS and she was actually topping her state. She started going through all her books and she started finding the information to where it was true. So she left the IRS and started helping people realize, and businesses specifically realize that. And how
I want to meet her.
I'll send you her video. I think I have it in my archives, but I'll send you her video.
Say, Cameron,
Yeah.
have you ever heard of the American States Assembly?
So my stepfather just sent that information over to me, actually. I
Yeah,
haven't looked into
okay.
it yet, but
There's a woman named Anna that runs that. She's in Alaska.
yeah,
I think if you Google her, find out where she's at, her webpage. She does a webinar every Monday. Okay.
okay.
I believe she has that information. So to save you time, if you asked her for it, she probably has it right on her fingertips.
All right, very cool. I'll just
All right.
look right over there then. And
Real quick, Raymond, what did you say her name was?
I forget her last name. Her first name is Anna. Okay. But again, if well, I don't recommend Google. I use DuckDuckGo, but American States Assembly, you'll probably find her webpage and
Okay.
the information there.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, that's what it was. I was trying to remember it before this webinar. I wanted to post those links up on the website for the American States Assembly. Here it is.
And Cameron, I wanted to mention this, but I had tried to see
You low, Akila.
your website, and it sent it back to me, and it was saying something about your website wasn't allowing you to accept them or something.
Wait, say what?
I had tried to send you a donation through your website via PayPal, and it rejected
Oh,
back to
I
me.
don't, that should be working now. Let me know if it's not working. There was my bank was going through, my bank got bought out by another bank. And so there were all these changes happening. And so all of my PayPal accounts got kicked off and I had to sign them all back on and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Don't you love it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All the bank account numbers and credit card numbers changed and yeah.
So
I
I
still got
guess
bill collectors coming after me.
this private membership association thing has my mind just like
It should simplify a lot for you.
it definitely seems like it makes it so simple because basically it's just like none of that applies to me because I'm a private membership. None of that
Right.
applies to me because I'm a member. Instead of
No,
having to jump through all of these hoops and make sure you got the trustees and all this stuff set up, even though, I still want to learn about trust because I think it's vital to know about that because essentially we would still need a house to house our assets, right? A private membership can't house things. It's not a person, is
right.
it?
No, that's only for running a business, right? So for example, if you want to put a house, as protect the house as an asset, right? And the property as an asset. And even more so, if you want to stop paying property taxes on that house, right? You can do that with what is called a private irrevocable trust, right? Brilliance in Commerce helps people with that all the time. And it's the most powerful way to protect your assets.
Can I ask you what is the difference between a private irrevocable trust versus business trust? Because I keep hearing people talk about them. Sometimes they use them like they're interchangeable, and then sometimes
Right. So when it comes to the banks and the government, they want to hear the term private irrevocable trust. They don't want to hear anything else, right? There's all sorts of different kinds of private irrevocable trusts, right? And there's one particular kind that is income taxable, right? And according to them, that's why they want to hear this particular term, private irrevocable trust, is because it does also reference one that is income taxable, but it also references a bunch that are not income taxable, right? And
you said the private irrevocable trust is income taxable?
no, there is a type that is, but most of them are not, right? And that's why they want to see that language, right? Private irrevocable trust. So when you go to apply for your bank account and such, they just want to see the term private irrevocable trust, but there's all sorts of different kinds, right? There's pure trust, there's common law trust, there's natural law trust, there's, business trust, there's, UBO trust, unorganized or unincorporated business organization trust, right? But they all basically are just different names for a private irrevocable trust, right? So private irrevocable trust is the blanket term.
Okay. And I'm not gonna ask too many questions about the different types because I feel that we'll get that understanding as we read through the book, The Art of Passing the Buck.
Perhaps, yeah, they might go into, for example, the different meanings between, for example, private, pure, personal, and common law, for example. But they might not go into such things as, well, they might go into like the unincorporated business organization. I can't remember. But they should definitely, everything should be about going over private irrevocable trusts, right?
Okay. So make sure I understand correctly. You said private membership associations are only for operating business, and then the private irrevocable trusts are what you would use to hold assets.
Right. And you could subsequently also use it to run a business. So for example, here's where having a private trust would come into play, even though you're operating as a sole prop or as a private membership association or as an LLC, right? What the additional benefit of having the trust behind your business is it separates your business assets from your personal assets, right? So if you're operating as a private membership association under your social security number and somebody tries to sue you, right, they can sue you for all of your assets, right? But if your private membership association is in a trust and now they're suing that, then now they're suing the trust, which means they can only sue the assets that are in the trust. They can't go after you personally, right? So it gives you that separation of personal and business assets, which is exactly the same as getting that limitation of liability that the government gives you if you were to set up a corporation, for example. But in this way, you do it without having to pay income taxes.
So if I understand you correctly, then a private membership association is kind of similar like doing business as a sole proprietor. The only difference is that it's a private capacity. Like you're using your social security number, so you're liable for everything.
No, it is markedly different from operating as a sole proprietor. When you operate as a sole proprietor, you're operating like an independent contractor, right? When you set up a trust, you're operating more like a corporation, right? So a corporation has a board of directors and it has officers, right, which run the corporation. A trust has a board of trustees and trustees that run the organization. Same responsibilities, different terminology, right? One's public, one's private. That's really all it boils down to. One key difference is a corporation must be set up to be organized like a hierarchy. A trust can be set up to operate however you want it to. That's where the differences start to come in from that. But in that sense, no, a trust is not like a sole prop because it does require more than one person to run it.
I actually was referring to the private membership association.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Private membership association can be run just like a sole prop. Ultimately, as it grows, you tend to think of as a private membership association more along the same lines as you would think of like a membership run LLC, right? Because there's two different types of LLCs. You have manager managed LLCs and member managed LLCs, right? Manager managed means it's hierarchical. The owner basically manages everything and then delegates control, right? Member managed means everyone that works in that organization, everyone that's a member of that organization contributes democratically to how that organization makes decisions, right? And you can do the same thing with a private membership association. You can kind of run it like a manager managed LLC, or you can run it like membership managed, where every member gets to contribute.
So you were saying to have a trust own the private membership association?
Right. That way, if somebody decides to try and sue the association, they can only sue the assets in the trust.
And the smart thing would be to not put anything in that trust, right? And to
Well,
funnel it to
right, to
another-
keep the funds in that trust having only to do with that business, right?
Okay.
And then obviously, you know, wherever you want to put your profit, right? So that your profit's protected, you could separate your profit into your private account or personal account rather, or you could create another trust for it that's separate. You know, you can do all sorts of things. You can set up as many trusts as you want to protect your assets.
But we need EIN numbers, or as they call, well, 98 numbers and all of that in order to
All
open-
trusts will come with an EIN number. You have to apply for one through the IRS. And then
So-
you just got to make sure you're applying for an irrevocable trust EIN. That's it. That's all you got to make sure of. The paperwork will tell you that you have to file an income tax. You just have to understand that you're doing a private trust, so no, you don't.
So question, how then, because I've heard people say you don't have to register anything when you do a private trust, but that sounds like we're registering something, right?
It's not. You're just applying for a number, right? It's an organizational number so that you can get a bank account. You can't get a bank account without that EIN number. But getting an EIN number for an irrevocable trust is not like registering something. Like when you set up a corporation, for example, you have to get an EIN number for that corporation, but that doesn't register the corporation, right? Filing your articles of incorporation with your Secretary of State is what registers the corporation as a legal entity, right? Which is a step that you don't necessarily take with the trust, right? Because it's in the private arena. The state doesn't know about it, doesn't have to know about it. It's a private trust, right?
You also have to have a foreign address, right? When you apply for it, you have to have a.
So you have a foreign address, you just don't know that it's foreign, right? So the address that you're currently living at can be written in a way that puts it under the United States jurisdiction, or it can be written in a way that puts it under your state's jurisdiction. Your state is a foreign nation to the United States, all right? It is one of the states of the Union, right, of the original de jure United States, right? But that United States no longer exists. They're bankrupt and have been reorganized into United States Incorporated, which is a 501c3, what's it called? I'm blanking. You know, it's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, is what the United States currently is. And their jurisdiction is Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, Guam, and a few other things. But all the several states of the Union are now foreign nations to that United States. So when you write your address that way, you're writing a foreign address.
So to write our address properly, to make it seem foreign, we would put, you know,
So some
address
people get
is.
really complicated with this, but the simplest way, and this is powerful enough, and that's what I'll stick to because I'm not showing anybody, I'm just saying it. The simplest way is just put C/O, which means care of, right, in front of your address. And then when you write in the zip code, just put brackets around it, square brackets. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now it's a foreign address.
I've also heard that we should actually spell out the state and not use the abbreviation.
Yes, spell out the state, or at least use the 4-letter abbreviation if you don't have enough room. Never use the 2-letter abbreviation. Yeah, and also if you want to be a bit more powerful about it, spell out the road as well, rather than abbreviating the road, right? Spell it out as ROAD, you know, drive, DRIVE, not DR period, you know. It makes it a little bit more powerful as well.
Gotcha.
And could we do the same thing for if we have, gosh, what are they called? Like when you get an address through UPS, can you do the same thing?
Oh,
What
you
is
mean
it?
like a UPS box?
Yes.
You
we
you can use that as a mailing address, but not for a business. A business has to have a physical mailing address. So if that needs to be a foreign address, then you just need to make sure that you always use the CO and spell out the state all the way and bracket the
So
zip
you
code.
can't, so that wouldn't be, because I've always heard that like if you get one through UPS or like FedEx, that is different from something like a PO box because it's
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is the fact that there is an adhesion contract attached to receiving mail at your mailbox. You know, it's technically considered a government benefit, a government service. So receiving mail at your mailbox like makes you a US citizen. And that technically does, but for all intents and purposes nowadays, it's kind of written off. There's been court cases where the judges just don't care about it anymore because it's such a technicality, you know. So you don't need to have a PO box or a UPS box in order to remain private anymore.
But you said for business purposes, those aren't good, right? UPS and
You-
FedEx? Is that
Well,
what
you
just
can
said?
have them, and you know, like if you want to keep the business address private from your customers, for example, you have those and you give that address to your customers.
Mhm.
But you can't give that address to your vendors or you know, anyone, you know, any like other business that you do business with or bill collectors or anything of that nature. You have to have a, you know, physical business address that they send mail to.
So even if it's a virtual address, a virtual
Or
mailbox?
like applying for your EIN, you have to use the physical business address. They want to know where your business is physically located, for example.
So are you saying you don't use the C/O in that case?
No, you do. Whenever you have to supply the actual business address, you use the CO. You use the foreign address format, yeah.
Will virtual address be used as that? Like if we pay for being able to receive mail from a location,
I'm sorry, what?
a virtual mailing address. So essentially, these are like places that sell access to the address, and you can make that your business address as long as
You
can
can do
receive
that, yep.
Mhm.
If you're trying to get business loans, I don't necessarily recommend doing that. Because in general, unless you're also renting office space there so that you actually have office space there, in general, they want to see that it's, you know, a more legitimate business address, but they also don't necessarily want to see that it's your home address, unless of course it makes sense that you would be running the business out of your home.
Okay. And I had two questions in regards to the trust. Someone it was actually, I'm never able to recall her name, but the female, for passing the buck.
Gwen.
What's her name?
Her name is Gwen from Passing the Bucks.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
Gwen. So Akila sent me an interview she did, and she was saying on there that, which I had never heard anybody else speak of, that your trust has to basically kind of have time to mature before your assets in it can no longer be seized. Do you know how we're able to find that out for our state? Because she said it varies depending on your state. Some states it will take 3 years, some it could take 10 years. It just depends on your state. And I attempted to look it up in Florida, but I didn't know exactly how to find it. I typed in the keywords like trust and seize, but the only information that kept coming up was how your trust can be seized. It didn't list like.
I actually
content.
was not aware of that. I'll have to look into that in more detail. There's one thing that I'm aware of, but I don't necessarily know how to do it yet. I'll have to ask Robert Dunlap for more details on this one because he's the one who informed me. But if that's true, there's a way to accelerate that. because your trust is a legal entity, right? And legal entities can, since it's a trust, right? And it's operating based on, like, if everyone in that trust is sovereign, there's a way to basically take that trust, I think through the Hague International Court of Justice, to actually get an EIN number or some sort of number through the Hague International Court of Justice, to make your trust sovereign. And then from that point forward, the IRS can't even like try to audit you.
Okay, and another question was, I heard someone mention that when having a trust and putting your assets in there as far as currency or true money, you don't want to put any colorable money in there, so no Federal Reserve notes. You want to convert that into gold or silver or any other precious metal and put that in there, because they were saying once you put a Federal Reserve note in there, you are then opening it up to the public and making
So
it valuable
yeah,
for taxes.
all Federal Reserve notes are considered the public currency, right? So all Federal Reserve notes are considered taxable income, right?
Right.
So a way around this, instead of having to go back to the 19th century and convert your, Federal Reserve notes into actual gold and silver, what you can do is when you deposit that money in the form of a check, okay, not cash, it has to be in the form of a check, okay? You sign that check, and on the back of that check, when you sign it, obviously you do your without recourse and all rights reserved and all that once you become a secured party creditor. But then you sign 12 USC 411, okay? And that cites the United States Code 12 USC 411, which basically states that any money deposited under this code is deposited as United States currency, not Federal Reserve currency, and it does not add to the federal debt, therefore it is not income taxable, right? So that's all you got to do is on the back of your checks, 12 USC 411 turns it into United States Treasury notes instead of Federal Reserve notes and makes it non-taxable income.
Okay, and what was the other thing you said when we were signing? As
once you're a secured party creditor, after you sign, you do, the little C with a circle around it for your copyright, and then you write all rights reserved without recourse.
Without recourse. Okay.
Now,
Yeah,
without
Kamiron.
recourse, you can use any time, but until you actually copyright your trade name, you can't use the copyright and all rights reserved. You have to copyright your name first.
What?
Yeah, Cameron, I have to mention, I've been using that, without recourse in the past.
Yep.
And the banks now are not accepting it.
Yep. They don't like to accept that. So even more
Well,
powerfully,
it passes all the burden onto them.
well, it takes the burden off of you. It shouldn't pass the burden off of them. But like, for example, Bank of America refuses to cash or deposit checks without recourse written on them now because they were bailed out by the US government in 2008 during the financial crisis. And so now they're under contract with the US government to, they're not allowed to accept non-income taxable denominations because they have to pay the government back for being bailed out. But there are other things that do it. And once you become a secured party creditor, once you have your name copywritten, you don't need to use without recourse anymore because you can use all rights reserved, which is even more powerful.
So there will never be a time where, because I see that other people use the UCC, is that contradicting to use the UCC1 code?
No, it's just redundant is all it is. If you're saying all rights reserved, you're saying I'm a secured party creditor. If you're doing like your secured party creditor documents, for example, will have that much redundancy, but really nothing else needs that much redundancy. If you're just signing a check, you could just sign it all rights reserved 12 USC 411. They only give you so much room to work with. So
Okay. And also without prejudice. That's not, heard some people say that no longer works, also.
it's the same as without recourse. Yeah.
Okay,
Some banks accept it, some don't.
okay.
I got another quick question. You know, when it comes to secured party creditors, private membership associations, and you mentioned you got to use the C/O on your address and the brackets on the zip. You know, I was looking at my checkbook. It has my regular address on it. Do I need to go so far as changing that on my checkbook? Okay, like even the rubber stamp I use for, return receipt on a piece
Not
of mail, you
really.
gotta take it that far?
No, especially if you're using that to pay somebody else, right? Because in general, that person's not looking to use private money, they're looking to use the public money. And in general, when you're looking to send some money to somebody, you're actually operating as your corporation to send money to them, not as your private self. So yeah, it's not so important in that case.
All right. Well, listen, Cameron and the ladies, I gotta go. I made some changes to get on this webinar today, but I have other commitments, so I gotta bow out. So
I'm glad you were here, Ray. Thanks for coming in.
yeah, and I look forward to the
This
next
is a
one.
good time to end it anyways.
And nice meeting you.
Yeah, my pleasure, ladies.
All right, have a good one.
Yeah. Okay,
Take care,
thanks,
Ray.
everyone.
Okay,
Cameron,
yeah,
before we all sign up, I do have one more question. Okay,
absolutely.
you know the symbol for the UCC codes, when you're looking at the UCC codes and that like double S symbol?
Yeah,
What
it
does
stands for
that mean?
statute. It means statute.
Why is it like two S's though?
Just it's like in music how they have the bass clef and the treble clef or whatever that's called. That's all it is. It's just a symbol for recognition.
Okay. That was my last question. It always reminds me of the Avon SOS. I don't know if you know what it is.
Skin so soft.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a legal symbol, meaning referring to an actual legal statute. That's it.
Okay.
I had a question about the copywriting stuff. So are we filing like a trademark, like where we pay the $250 from the what is it, the United Patent? I don't know what it's called. I think you know what I'm talking about, but this is like the typical route they tell a business to go through when they want to trademark their logo or their business name. Is this the same route that we would go when we are trademarking?
No. Well, not for our corporate name, because what we're going to do is the common law version of copywriting, not the corporate version of copywriting, right? So the common law version goes back through history much farther, and is the private form of the copyright, which is why we want to be using that versus the corporate version.
Gotcha.
It's just as powerful, but it's also a lot more simple. You don't have to pay the government a fee. You do have to pay a newspaper a fee, or you could choose to post it online, right? And with our private membership association, what we can do is we can set up a web page for our members to post publicly their common law copyright contract online. Basically, you just need to keep it online for 3 months, and then you can pull it, right? And as long as it was there for 3 months, you have notified the world of your copyright, and that's all you need.
Okay.
And you said make sure to like print it out though, print it out with the date and the time.
Have you keep the original copy in, along with your all your secured party creditor documents in a fireproof, waterproof safe, and you keep copies in your office and in your car, and anytime you need to send somebody copies, you make copies of your copies. You never even touch your originals again. You just keep them safe.
Okay. And you said the 12, reverting back to the gold and silver, you said the 12 USD 411 turns fiat money well, when you write on the back of the check, it no longer represents fiat money, but it represents,
That represents US Treasury notes rather than Federal Reserve notes.
okay. Okay, and I pulled it up, so I'm gonna go and read it probably today too,
What
because
is it
it's very
again?
interesting.
What's the code?
12 USC 411, 12 United States Code 411.
And this is in a UCC?
No, this is in United States Code.
God damn, so we got the UCC codes,
Mhm.
the United
United States Code, then you got your state's general statutes. Yes, the law is very complex. Fortunately, to operate in sovereignty, we only need to know so much.
And that's where I'm at, because it just starts to become so convoluted that you just feel like, damn, like I'ma just stay a slave at this point, because
I know, there comes a point when you feel like all of this studying is like you're drowning in the middle of the ocean and you have no idea which way to swim. You know, I get it. Yeah, that's why I'm here, to answer questions, because when you don't have that, you don't know what book to read next, what direction to go next. You know, there's just infinite possibilities and no direction.
this actually has been very valuable. I look forward to becoming a member of your association or your site, so that we can move forward with our process. Dwayne, how are you feeling? Do you still feel like we should proceed with trust, or go ahead and just knock out the SPC process?
Well, I mean, the SPC process doesn't really cost much money. It's only time, right? So if I were you, I would try to do them simultaneously.
That's what I was gonna say. That's exactly what my answer was gonna be. I think we could do both at the same time.
Another question then. Once we do the SPC process, what motions are going to be triggered from that we're going to need to change? Like, do we have to redo the things that we're currently doing now? Like, for example,
It depends on how gutsy you are, right? So for example, I mean, the last part of the process is sending out all your notifications, right? Notifying the governor, notifying the secretary of the state. You know, if you want to notify your senators, you can do that. You can notify the president if you want. Most important thing is to notify your local police department, right? To get them to update your profile with your new status as a sovereign, right? Because once that's on file, now every time they pull you over, you can just be like, hey, officer, just pull up my file. Have a nice day. You know, sorry, I know you can't give me a ticket. You know.
So what instances would this drag us into court?
The only instance that could possibly drag you, like, so for example, if once everything is all said and done, you have your secured party creditorship package complete, everybody's been notified, right? And you get pulled over for speeding and you tell the cop, you know, to look up your file, that you can't give me a ticket because blah, blah, blah. You show him your secured party creditorship paperwork. This is what's going to cost you if you do this. This is what's going to have to happen if you do this, right? And he still gives you that ticket. Well, you have to sue his ass now. You have to sue that cop. And that might land you in court, you know? If you're doing your trust and you got your business going, and a customer feels as though, well, I mean, that's just in general, a customer feels that they weren't serviced properly, they feel like you damaged them in some way, they sue you, they can take you to court. That's a way you can end up in court. If you're not filing your income tax returns with the IRS and you're doing everything properly, or maybe you're not doing something properly, or the IRS is trying to claim you're not doing something properly in any case to remain in the private jurisdiction, they can try and take you to court, but they have to be able to prove that you're doing something wrong that's bringing you into the public, right? Such as a whole year went by and you didn't have a single business meeting and didn't take any meeting minutes, you know? Well, obviously you're not running your trust actually anymore, so you can't claim to be running a private trust, right? You know, they'll try and get you on technicalities like that. So, and that's what the book you just bought, Passing the Buck, like, that's the introductory one, really. It's the second book, the really expensive book that goes over all the nuances, everything that you got to be on top of in order to keep the IRS from auditing you, kind of a thing. That's where you really start to learn about that stuff.
Gotcha.
So before we would even have to present in court though, wouldn't they have to provide all proof that all stipulations are in truth factual before they could even actually draw us?
Well,
into
no, that's what court is all about, is providing the proof and working your case. But ultimately, in order for them to win the case, they have to be able to prove all of that. And that's where it's fortunate, right? Because the burden of proof is on them, not on you, right? As long as you've been running your trust and everything properly, right? Then the burden of proof is on them to prove that you owe income taxes. And if they can't do that, they lose the case.
Yeah.
Because I was reading, go ahead, Akila.
No, I was just gonna say, for us, this just comes to doing our due diligence to make sure that, you
Right.
know, documenting, we are organized, we are structured, and we are actually managing our affairs like mature, private businessmen and women.
And that's where they get you, right? Because the whole definition of being a sovereign is managing your own affairs. So if you make one little mistake, you know, in managing your affairs, they can, you know, they can try and get you on those technicalities.
And back to the example you gave about like if a client attempts to sue someone, wouldn't they? So they would be sending, they would be suing the business, and being that we're not the business, how will we operate in that capacity? If we don't want to claim to be the representative of the business, will we just claim to be the conductor of the business, or how would that even go? Especially since the business can't show up for themselves.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay, so hold on a sec. Who's suing? Is it a customer or the IRS?
A customer. So the
Okay.
example you gave was like if a customer wanted to sue someone for some type of aversion they have with
You're
the product.
still
or something like that.
representing that business, but if it's being held in trust, you're representing that business as a trustee.
Okay. So they wouldn't be just suing the business. Like if we go to sue Walmart, we're not suing the CEO, we're suing Walmart. And there's
depends on the nature of the crime. You can, depending on the nature of the crime, you can sue the business. You can sue the business and the people that were directly involved with the crime.
But if the client,
the same can happen to you, right? So if a person feels they were violated by just the business, they sue just the business, then they're suing just the business. But if they felt that they were personally violated by you as a customer of that business, they can choose to not only sue the business, but they can choose to also sue you directly as part of that.
So if they're only suing the business, though, say they're not aware of that they can even sue the actual living person. Say if they're only
and most people aren't, right? Most people are only aware of how to sue the business name, and that's it.
Right. Do we show up on behalf, or is that all handled through paperwork, or is that all handled out in the
whoever in your trust indenture agreement is set up to basically accept the mail, and you know, I can't remember what it's called, the secretary or whatever or something or another to that effect, but you know, whoever is set up to basically receive all notifications, respond to all notifications, right, is the person who represents the company on that behalf. And then if it actually goes to court, right, that person, obviously, if it's not you, communicates with you on these issues. And then if it goes to court, generally, you would want to represent your business yourself, not have that person do it for you. But in many cases, it could be, because that person could be your lawyer. A lot of times that's your lawyer who you have do that for you.
Right.
But then you don't want to have a lawyer representing your trust, right?
Right.
Because a trust is in the private, and if you have a public figure, such as a public attorney representing your private trust, you just brought that private trust into the public jurisdiction.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask you. So what would we have in place of a lawyer?
Right, so you can still have a lawyer, but rather than having them represent you, you have them on retainer as an advisor, right? You call them for advice.
Okay,
And you talk to them about, like, what do I say? How do I do this? How do I file this? Whatever the case is, they tell you what to do so that you can do it.
okay. Okie dokie.
As long as you're representing yourself, you're operating in sovereign capacity. Once you have somebody else represent you or your business, now you're admitting to being infantile, of unsound mind, and incapable of making decisions for yourself, which is called a ward at law. And you don't want to be a ward. A ward is a slave.
Okay,
Yeah, you can watch that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
good stuff.
I think that's a good time to end this meeting. It's well over an hour and a half long, so.
Yes.